following our briefings on the 14th of June, 26th of June, and 12th of July, today's engagement forms part of government's ongoing commitment to transparency, accountability, and regular public communication on the implementation of the 5-point strategy that is designed to strengthen migration management, to make sure that we uphold also the rule of law and safeguard the security and well-being of everyone in South Africa. We then today invite the chairperson of the Inter-Ministerial Committee on Migration, Minister Kubai, to also give us further update. She will be the one that will also identify or introduce the panel that is here, as I've seen others have requested the names. Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brawili. Good afternoon, everyone. I am joined by Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Minister Lamola, Minister of Police, Minister Kachalia, and DG Home Affairs, who's the lead DG for the IMC, DG Makode. I think before we start, let me just call upon all South Africans, especially young people. As IEC has announced next weekend for its open voter registration, which is the 1st and the 2nd of August, that all of us have an obligation to sustain our democracy. Therefore, we call upon all of us to take responsibility, those who are not registered, to go and register for this upcoming elections. I think we support IEC. That's why we're making this call every platform we are finding ourselves addressing. Today, the IMC on migration wishes to provide South Africans with a progress update on the implementation of government's 5-point plan to strengthen migration management, uphold the rule of law, secure our borders, and maintain South Africa's constitutional commitment to human dignity, social cohesion, and human rights. The 5-point plan announced by government through the President as a comprehensive response to migration challenges is not a short-term intervention. It is a coordinated national program that brings together all spheres of government, law enforcement agencies, border authorities, municipalities, and social partners. Before I get to the progress report of implementation of the 5-point plan, after the last media briefing, as we agreed that we will do the updates fortnightly, as the IMC, as we are now meeting fortnightly. Allow me to register our foremost concerns on 2 issues involving unauthorized identity searches of foreign nationals and groups that continuously undermine our law enforcement officers. We have observed that there are still individuals who impersonate Home Affairs officials and target foreign nationals and some businesses for these illegal identity searches, and some of them are starting to take the shape of extortion. We've seen a video that we have sent to SABC to actually assist us in dealing with that, because we do believe that that is a criminal element and that is actually extortion. We want to urge whoever is involved in this wrong practice to desist from it or face the might of the law. We are glad to report that our law enforcement authorities acted swiftly in arresting about 7 of these individuals in Polokwane, and we would like to issue a stern warning to everyone who is involved in this to stop. We have also noted that some groups tend to confront and seek to resist lawful operations by our law enforcement authorities. A case in point is the confrontation between law enforcement officers and some foreign nationals who were resisting law enforcement operations in Bellville a few days ago. Again, we would like to issue a strong warning against those who undermine the work of our law enforcement officers or otherwise face the consequences. Regarding reports of individuals who regrettably lost their lives during this operation, we would like to confirm that the matter is a subject of investigation by IPIT, and the report will be made public in due course. So there's been an incident of a person who lost their lives in this operation, and IPIT is investigating. We have also noted continued concerns or even articulations publicly raised by certain sectors in our society regarding the humanitarian situation in the Musina Temporary Repatriation Processing Center. Once again, we want and we would like to reiterate that government and social partners have been coordinating assistance to vulnerable foreign nationals affected by recent tensions and displacement. These interventions have included provision of healthcare services and medical screening at identified processing sites and temporary holding areas, access to food, water, sanitation, and basic relief support for vulnerable individuals and families. Child protection measures and support services for women and children and other vulnerable groups have been provided. Coordination with embassies, consulates, faith-based organizations, NGOs, and international partners to facilitate humanitarian assistance were required. Identification and referral of persons requiring emergency social support and protection services were done. So I want to reiterate, there's not been any violation of human rights, but additionally, UN bodies as well have been on site and can affirm that we've been working in the manner that is required from us. We have taken all this intervention because we recognize the plight of those affected by the situation. But we also want to emphasize that South Africa has, in many instances, provided humanitarian and logistical support beyond what is ordinarily required under international repatriation arrangements, particularly where vulnerable individuals are involved or where receiving countries' logistical arrangements are still being finalized or delayed. I will now turn to the report on the progress achieved to date under each pillar of the 5-point plan. And we emphasize this because that's how the public must gauge our work and analyze our work and hold us accountable in that regard. First pillar, on cracking down on crime and strengthening law enforcement. In this area of work, we continue to intensify integrated law enforcement operation, targeting criminal networks that exploit migration vulnerabilities, including businesses that employ illegal migrants. Working through multi-agency operations involving the South African Police Services, Border Management Authority, Home Affairs, the Hawks, and other law enforcement agencies, significant progress have been made against illegal border crossing, human trafficking networks, labor exploitation, fraudulent documentation syndicates, illegal mining operation, criminal enterprises that facilitate unlawful migration. I must add, in the other teams, it's the team from Department of Labor that does inspections at workplace. These operations have resulted in increased arrests, greater processing of undocumented persons, and improved coordination among law enforcement agencies. To date, law enforcement authorities have registered 354 cases of arrest, and prosecutions are still pending against individuals who are in contravention of the law related to the issue of migration. An additional 69 people were arrested in Jeffreys Bay last weekend and appeared in court on Monday. Government is making it clear that migration management is fundamentally management is fundamentally a rule of law matter, and it has to be taken by those who are entitled to do or who has the authority to do so. Criminality will not be tolerated regardless of who is involved. And I must highlight, we have, as the IMC, taken note on some of the concerns, feedback from Minister Lamula in this area. So in terms of the figures, and also just seeing those who are actually contravening the migration law by making or impersonating home affairs officials, more that we need to be able to act in this area. And we have agreed that we will intensify and drill down into the data and track in terms of the progress within the justice system to be able to see outcomes. Regarding deportation and repatriations, we can confirm that since Malawian nationals assembled at Sherwood in KwaZulu-Natal between the 14th of June 2026 to 24th July 2026, a total of 68,138 foreign nationals have been processed. The majority repatriated following processing at the Musina Temporary Repatriation Processing Center, the TRPC. So overall now, from the last stats we gave, which was around 54, we are now sitting at 68,138. The Border Management Authority has processed at all its ports of entry 72,906 repatriations for the period between 7 June until 14 July. For various nationalities, inclusive of what has been processed at the TRPC. So this would be those that have traveled through their airports, airport, yeah. And then those, so it's land and air that has been affected. So just to explain, BMA has consolidated the figures. And between that period, that's the figure that they are giving us of 72,906. And some would be those that had their own passport that would have decided to depart. You will recall countries such as Ghana started repatriating their nationals much earlier. The majority of nationals processed at the TRPC center were Malawian nationals, followed by Zimbabweans, and then Mozambican nationals in terms of the highest ranking numbers. It's also important to note that our dedicated migration courts have been busy. They are finalized from the 1st of April 2026 to end of June. These are the deportations that we have been working on. And I must clarify, because we continue to say to people, we have been working across. And the figures of deportation that have been processed directly by our courts, the figure stands at 28,736 immigration-related cases. And as I say, mainly deportation. Of these cases, 46% were for Gauteng, constituting 13,312 cases, while KwaZulu-Natal had 4,973, the majority from the Durban Central through our dedicated courts. You'd remember when we set up that, assisted by the chief magistrate there, that we've really appreciated his work and his continued support together with the team that is based on the Durban magistrate courts. Cape Town, in terms of the work we have seen, while Western Cape had actually 3,334 and Eastern Cape finalized 2,019 cases. Work is now underway to set up a dedicated court at OR Tambo International Airport at the site designated by the Airports Company of South Africa. Similarly, the upgrades of the Lindela Court at the deportation facility will soon be, has started actually in terms of the work. The facility upgrading will start, but in terms of setting up the personnel, that has been concluded. At the airports, at the OR Tambo, the team has gone, they've seen the site, they are happy with the site. Now it's the process of us ensuring that the facility does meet the requirements of a court. I've been informed that actually it won't be one court room, but we have capacity to have about 3 court rooms. And we'll see as the Department of Justice whether we utilize it only for that. Maybe we could offload some of the pressures that Kempton Park is experiencing. The IMC has taken a decision at its regular meeting last week, Friday, that as of the 1st of August 2026, operations at the TRPC in Musina will be scaled down from 20,000 capacity to 1,500 capacity. This comes after analysis of data trends for the past 3 weeks. The IMC would like to take this opportunity to thank the officials from various government departments, especially DPWI, Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, Department of Home Affairs, South African National Defence Force, Social Development, Border Management Authority, South African Police Service, Department of Health, Musina Municipality, and Limpopo Provincial Government for operating the center for 7 days a week from 8:30 until 9 o'clock at night. At times, the center would operate until around 2 a.m. in the morning. You will recall that the IMC took the decision to establish the TRPC on the 26th of June. And in that, within 4 days, the center was up and running. So that's why we appreciate this, and it's a showcase of state capacity to be able to do work. When we work together, coordinated, we are able to see results. Similarly, our appreciation goes to various embassies that worked with the IMC, that request through DECO, that requested support to repatriate their nationals. Would like to thank the business community, particularly MTN, for the 15 million donation, which was given to Gift of the Givers to provide the necessities of the center. The provision of network connectivity by both MTN and Vodacom on the center. Again, we want to say to our partners, we appreciate the support of the NGOs in Musina, Durban, Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Cape Town, and other parts of the country where they provided valuable support for those that were in distress. Food parcel, Pampers, formula, milk, water, sanitation, sanitary wires, etc. were things that the NGOs assisted us to provide to the individuals. I want to particularly name the following NGOs that helped us at the Musina Repatriation Center as we scaled down. The NGOs include the following: Ali Amdad Foundation, Africa Muslim Agency, Musina Reform Church, Mahlasedi Foundation, and Gift of the Givers. These are the ones that supported us there in terms of the NGOs. And we'd like to thank all the churches that supported us, who provided psychosocial support, including under the coordination of South African Council of Churches, that coordinated various visits to the center to provide support and care to those that were in the center. While scaling down the center, we assure all stakeholders that government remains committed to support missions within our borders in repatriating their nationals should the need arise. To this end, the IMC through COCTA identified assembly points across the country with the municipalities to ensure that going forward, we don't find ourselves unable to respond in time as we've seen. We therefore urge all stakeholders to continue to provide support at designated assembly points, in particular working with municipalities. So the municipalities would know where these assembly points are, and should there be a need, they will activate them. We envisage that the phased scaling down of the center will not negatively impact or compromise both the deportation and repatriation processes we are undertaking and we are required to do. The state remains with the legal obligation to continuously manage the issue of migration in the country and will continue to do so, guided by the 5-point plan and immigration laws of our country and the work being monitored by Cabinet. We remind everyone what the TRPC was able to do for us as a country, which is as follows. It allowed us to orderly and in a dignified manner have departures through a centralized processing facility that enabled repatriations through a safer and coordinated manner with access to humanitarian assistance and transportation and documentations provided by Home Affairs and the respective embassies. It further reduced immediate safety risk through the establishment of a centralized center and site, which provided with and which SABs were able to provide security through those centers. Improved coordinations. It allowed us to work together with all stakeholders that enabled screening and monitoring of humanitarian relief by various stakeholders such as United Nations agencies, United Nations Children's Fund, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and International Organization for Migration, South African Council of Churches, Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs in the National Assembly, and the Limpopo Provincial Legislator Committee on Transport and Safety. All these individuals were at the center to monitor, evaluate, and check if we are compliant, but it assisted us to work with them in a coordinated manner. Commitment to human rights obligation through ensuring protection and assistance to vulnerable groups, including asylum seekers and refugees. This reinforces South Africa's obligation in terms of our constitution and international obligation. So we re-emphasize what we have done. These are tangible. These are not things that we are saying, but also we have been checked by those that have the responsibility to check in terms of our work. I move to the next area of work. In terms of coordination with province and local, the MC met with mayors and their teams on 3 metros in Gauteng. Particularly, the meeting was with Ekurhuleni, City of Johannesburg, and Tshwane on 22nd July to discuss a framework for addressing matters related to hijacked buildings, bad buildings, land invasion, illegal mining, and illegal trading. This includes buildings owned by municipalities, provincial government, and national governments, state-owned entities such as Transnet, Post Office, and privately owned buildings. The 3 metros reported work they are doing, challenges that they are faced with, and also highlighted areas they required intervention by the IMC. We will, in the coming week, engage the remaining metros to conclude this picture. In the meantime, the IMC has directed NetJoins to finalize the framework and also an operational concept to tackle these challenges that pose a safety risk and also revenue losses to the 3 municipalities. This is consolidated in terms of our work, where we want to make sure that we do not continue to have these buildings being utilized to house illegal immigrants, but also utilized for organized crime activities. We also wish to record on the landmark preservation order granted on 19 July 2026. The SABC and the NPA secured a High Court preservation order against Rietfontein property linked to 100 million crystal meth laboratory. The order authorizes the seizure and sale of the property along with 27,800 in cash confiscated during a takedown in November 2024. A Mexican national was arrested in connection with the operation, making significant strike against international drug syndicate. This is what our communities as well have asked us to look at, and therefore we are actually starting to track that work as IMC. The next area of work, securing of our borders. The second pillar focuses on strengthening border security and improving the integrity of South Africa's ports of entry. In this regard, the Border Management Authority continues to enhance border control measures, increase surveillance capacity, and improve coordination with security agencies. Government has also implemented strengthened border operation during peak periods, helping to improve the management of movement across ports of entry and reducing opportunities for illegal entry and transnational crime. Since April 2026, 93 joint borderline operations have been conducted, cracking down on illegal movement of illicit goods, human trafficking, and drug syndicates. On borderline infrastructure upgrades, we are glad to confirm that a memo will be tabled before Cabinet this week on Wednesday for a decision to commence critical borderline infrastructure projects. These phased projects will also prioritize the deployment of technological infrastructure to keep up with sophisticated criminal networks and syndicates which exploit our technological vulnerabilities. This is in addition to the work on the redevelopment of 6 South African busiest ports of entry, namely Limpopo, Beitbridge, Oshoek, Fixburg, Maseru, and Kopfontein. That will be moving towards contractual and financial close soon, so the construction can start at the beginning of 2027 for the ports of entry. So these are the border gates. But together with what we are putting before Cabinet this week, it's a border infrastructure in terms of the line across, being able to build just not only the fence, but also holistic approach in terms of responding to that. What Cabinet has been able to, we will definitely provide details to the public. That plan has been put in place. The MC has approved, including the implementation plan and the time frame. While more work remains to be done, South Africa is steadily building a modern integrated border management system capable of protecting national sovereignty while facilitating legitimate travel and trade that we desperately need as well. So we are not doing this work to close out legitimate traveling and legitimate trade. Now coming to the next area, the next pillar, it's working with other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to emphasize that migration is a regional, continental, and global challenge, not a challenge for one country alone. Government has therefore intensified engagements with neighboring countries and countries of origin to strengthen cooperation on migration management, documentation, repatriation processes, and information sharing. The MEC has maintained active engagement with affected states as part of efforts to manage current migration pressures and ensure that temporary interventions lead to sustainable solution. Current engagements include continued cooperation with countries such as Malawi and Zimbabwe regarding migration management and repatriation arrangements. Related to this is the fervent move by some of our counterparts to place the matter of migration and alleged Afrophobia by South Africa on the agenda of the next African Union Summit. The MC would like to echo the sentiments of Minister Lamula, who is also part of this committee and here today, in welcoming the opportunity to engage on migration at the highest level of the African Union, to ensure that migration across the continent becomes a choice rather than a necessity. We believe that establishing a dedicated agenda item at the African Union to address the primary push and pull factors and root causes of irregular migration, focusing squarely on good governance, democracy, and economic stability, will enable the development of a pragmatic, comprehensive approach to continental migration challenges. We have also noted the petition submitted to the International Criminal Court by two Ghanaian civilians, and we have been advised legally that this filing fails to satisfy the statutory legal triggers and jurisdictional requirements necessary for action by the court. We echo the statement Minister Lamula has issued in this regard as a country, and we support that as the IMC. South Africa remains committed to partnership, solidarity, and cooperation with countries across the continent. We believe that the solution lies in collaboration, not confrontation. The President of South Africa received a letter dated 1 June 2026 from the Honorable Commissioner Solomon Ayele Dereso, in his capacity as a member of the African Commission of Human Rights and People's Rights, and as the country rapporteur of the Republic of South Africa. The letter, titled Letter of Concern Regarding Xenophobic Attacks Against Foreign Nationals from Other African States in South Africa, expressed concerns over xenophobic violence against foreign nationals in South Africa, referencing specific incidents, legal obligations, and recommendations for government's action. The Commission further authorization on conduct requesting authorization on a conduct for a promotion to South Africa to engage directly with stakeholders and assist in addressing this human rights concern. The government is seized with the matter. We have actually, through Minister Lamula, submitted a report in this regard as per required. They are actually scheduled to come, and that engagement is facilitated by DECO for us. Closing the gap in policy and legislation. A process of review of policy and legislative areas that may be contributing to weaknesses in migration management is also underway. Our objective is to strengthen enforcement mechanisms, improve coordination amongst institutions, address regulatory gaps, and ensure that South Africans' migration systems remains effective, fair, and aligned with constitutional principle. Among these are the Citizenship, Immigration and Refugees Protection Bill, Employment Service Amendment Bill, Business Licensing Bill, which importantly seeks to review or to reserve certain business activities and sectors wholly or partly for South African citizens. This pillar is critical to ensuring that migration management remains sustainable over the long time. On economic stream, we have requested as the IMC, or the IMC took a decision that in the next 2 weeks, DTIC will hold discussion with sectors such as hospitality, agriculture, and others on matters of employment of locals and other issues related to the growth of the economy. This work will include the Department of Employment and Labour, the Department of Higher Education and Training, so that where there are gaps in terms of skills, those gaps are closed. Small Business Development and Department of Agriculture and Department of Tourism. That is the task team that we have given the responsibility, led by DTIC. Their task is to report to us in 2 weeks. They will engage with sectors and also engage with those that are affected in that area. This is in response as well, or in looking at the issue where we've seen some of the people saying that we are starting to see weaknesses in economic, particularly economic areas, in terms of labor, and therefore want to make sure that we have correct data, we have relevant information from the required people. Again, in this area, DECO, DTIC, and National Treasury will together convene a meeting with business that have invested on the continent to resolve the issues that they are faced and get feedback if issues have improved and whether there's still a need for developmental engagement, which Minister Lamula has been doing on the continent, particularly where there's been issues of concern. On stakeholders' engagement, the IMC continued to meet various stakeholders. This includes a meeting on 15 July with Foreign Correspondents Associations, where we shared our comprehensive approach on managing migration. Members of the IMC, Minister Lamula and Minister Kubai, participated in the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation Winter Seminar held on 23 July, held under the theme The Continent and Migration. The seminar brought together a selected group of thought leaders of strategic discussion and interactive session to deal with issues of migration. In the coming week, on the 3rd, the IMC will be meeting a delegation of churches from the SADC community that we have requested to interact with us, and those details will be shared. As I conclude, let me say, ladies and gentlemen and fellow South Africans, the implementation of the 5-point plan is yielding tangible progress. We are strengthening law enforcement. We are securing our borders. We are working closely with partner countries. We are improving policy and legislation, and we are ensuring that humanitarian consideration remains central to our response. While challenges remain, government is firmly committed to implementing a migration system that is secure, humane, lawful, and aligned with the values of our Constitution. The IMC will continue to provide regular updates as implementation progresses and remains committed to ensuring that South Africans receive factual, balanced, and accurate information on migration management. And we continue to report every month to Cabinet as the IMC. Together we can build a migration system that protects our national interests, promotes social cohesion, and upholds the rule of law. Nakens.
Thank you very much, Minister Kubai, in your capacity as the chairperson of the Inter-Ministerial Committee on Migration. The statement will be shared in the groups. Let me invite, by way of questions, from firstly the room here, and others will then deposit their questions on the media groups that we have, and will be able to read the questions to the members of the IMC here present to respond to the questions. Let me check in the room first if we have any questions. Minister, it appears your statement was quite clear. Oh, there is a question. So the drill is the same. You'll check for the red knob, you press it, and then you introduce yourself and the media house. Let me note first the hand here. I'll note the second hand, then I recognize the hands in that order. We start with you, my brother, and then the lady there.
Good afternoon. My name is Silva Sidia from UFM. I just want to ask on illegal miners, which are usually called Zamazama. Early this month, about 217 were arrested in Rampandein, but when they went to court in Western area, they were mostly charged by contravening the Immigration Act, not the one that actually they were doing, which is allegedly doing, which was to mine illegally. I'm just checking, why is that the case? Because we've seen over the years that they get deported and they still. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Nobile Madlala from Newsroom Africa.
Can you press the red?
Yeah, can you hear
Thank
me
you
now?
very much.
Okay. Nobile Madlala from Newsroom Africa. I think mine is to understand, as we're scaling down in Messina, what happens with regards to the people that we keep seeing in consulates that are still gathering in that area? What's the plan with regards to that?
Thank you very much. Ministers, I'm not sure. Okay. Maybe let's also take the online questions. Is Ishmael Selemani here?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I will start with Botlali Moloi from Good Faith. This one to the Chairperson of the Inter-Ministerial Committee on Migration. Minister, to what measurable extent has the government's 5-point plan on migration been operationalized at grassroots level, particularly in communities that continue to bear the primary social and economic costs of irregular migration? What institutional mechanism has the committee put in place to ensure that the high-level panel remains continuously informed of conditions in localities that attract limited media scrutiny, so that policy responses remain grounded in the lived realities of affected South African citizens? Minister, evidence indicates that irregular migrants, particularly from Somalia, Ethiopia, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, are increasingly relocating from high visibility provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng into less scrutinized areas, including the Eastern Free State and other quieter municipalities. What concrete measures is the Inter-Ministerial Committee implementing to prevent this secondary migration from imposing additional fiscal and security burdens on already strained local authorities? And how does the committee propose to mitigate the risk of heightened criminality and further deteriorating of service delivery in municipalities such as Maluti Apofu, which already face acute governance and national treasury intervention challenges? Reports from communities such as Maluti Apofu in the Free State suggest that certain Home Affairs officials and law enforcement personnel in areas outside sustained media attention, they have shown limited willingness to discharge their statutory duties in alignment with the 5-point plan on migration. What accountability and performance management interventions is the IMC contemplating to ensure that frontline officials effectively implement the plan, thereby reducing the risk that public frustrations escalates into disorder and undermines the rule of law? Chair, we also have questions from Valentin Hughes from Radio France International. Minister, Zimbabwe alone says nearly 100,000 of its citizens have left South Africa, but your figures show a total of around 72,000 departures. How do you explain this discrepancy in the figures? What is your official figure of departures since the first repatriation? Or should we add the 78,000 from the TRPC which gives us a total of 140,000 departures in total. The second question from Valentin. The farming community is beginning to make its voice heard regarding labor shortages caused by the mass departure of foreign nationals workers. Some are calling, for example, for faster regularization of undocumented workers. What is your approach? Thank you. That's all for now, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think you can take the third question that also came on the group.
Okay, thank you. There's questions from Letohonolo Lehana from Full View. Could the ANC chairperson give timelines on the proposed 3-year 10 billion rands program? My view is that the challenge lies not only in migration, but whether government policies are keeping pace with the realities facing communities. Is government on track with policies? It is not a question, but rather a comment. The real measure of state capacity is now effectively it disperses protest, but how competently is it governs before protest becomes inevitable? That is Little Nolo Lehana. That's all for now, Chair.
Thank you very much. The government is well represented to respond to all those questions, including those that might not be asked. We'll then invite the chair of the IMC to lead it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for those questions. Let me start with the issue of the illegal mining. You are correct in terms of the observation. We have, as the department, through the joints, we were asked by the JCPS to put together a bill that actually criminalizes illegal mining in the country. So we're looking forward, it's in the cabinet system, we'll be announcing it shortly around that so that we can deal with that, because currently illegal mining is not regarded as a crime in terms of the schedules that we have. So that's why we are addressing that. It's one of the policy gaps identified in organized crime and JCPS, more than in the migration, but it does help us as part of migration issue. And then in the matters that were asked about what happens to the people, that's why we are saying, one, is that when we look at the numbers of the people that we are processing at the center, we currently have a capacity that we have built for 20,000 people. Average amounts does not give us above 1.5, and that's why we're scaling down. But what we have done, that's why we emphasizing that through COGTA, working with municipalities, we've communicated assembling points in every municipality so that there is coordination of work between ourselves as government and the mission. So the missions needs to work together with the municipality. We don't want a haphazard way of working, but a more coordinated approach in terms of working. So the approach is for municipalities together with those who are needing. We don't want to announce them because they become a risk or they become a center that can be flooded with even things that are not needed for that. So we want it to be coordinated. Where there's no pressures, then we can deal with it in that manner. And then where there are pressures, we can respond. So that work, a communication has been sent to municipalities, and then we can continue where embassies do need. They know the channels of communication through DECO with us, and we are able to respond and assist. Then there's an issue around relocation of migration. Let me start with this point. One is that when we know that there are illegal immigrants, for example, we do raids everywhere. And we, as I said earlier on, we received information. Sometimes we receive tip-offs. That's how SABS works as well. government and law enforcement agencies might not be able to have information everywhere. That's why we rely on your CPF that we engaged previously. We rely on our communities to give us the tip-offs, and then we get that information, we go verify it and validate it. What becomes a danger is that sometimes you get this information to say this is what is happening. When you go and verify, there's no such. Somebody just created a story to say this is what is happening. Hence, previously we have said people must make sure that they don't spread fake news, they don't distribute fake information without it verified. So we'll check in terms of Malutia Pofo. As the questions have come through about Malutia Pofo, we are not aware of this movement of individuals that have gone through into that work. How do we work with communities? One, that's why we're saying we're working together now. We engage in municipalities because we want it sustainable and we want uniform approach in how we do things. But also in the process is to assist even our own executives, the politicians in those municipalities as they do the work. I remember when we had the foreign correspondence engagement, there was a complaint about Mayor Morero to say, no, Mayor Morero didn't conduct himself inappropriately. He was doing raids. And I said, but mayors, when they do the raids in the municipalities, they go with law enforcement agencies. They will have Home Affairs person, they will have JMPD, for example, in Johannesburg, and they will have SABS. What we want to emphasize consistently is also for them to observe the protocols, not to change and become law enforcement agencies for a particular area to be done by law enforcement agencies. And that's what we have been emphasizing. So the engagement with traditional leaders, we have reflected, we have agreed as the IMC that there are issues that we have agreed with our stakeholders, and we're doing that follow-up on work. In many communities, actually, the traditional leaders in remote, because the question comes about remote areas. In many communities in remote areas, in rural communities, traditional leaders actually have taken it upon themselves to know who is in the community, to utilize their ndunas, to be able to evaluate who is in there. It's not only in KwaZulu-Natal, across the country. That's the feedback that we are receiving. What we have not been, and I don't want to lie, what we have not been able to work on a mechanism is the townships. But in rural areas, I think it's even working better than urban areas, because the traditional leaders there have taken control. We've engaged with them. We've agreed on modus operandi on how things should be done, and they've been leading in that regard. So what we need to close the gap now is within townships. But with the townships as well, it's not completely out where we are not able to have. And that's why last briefing, if you remember, we spoke about the Department of Police, or SABS, Minister of Police, Ministry of Police, engaging with our Community Policing Forum. And in that as well, it was part of infusing the work that we do to the ground so that we don't remain with information that we don't have. So there will be that, as I say, we get regular. I mean, something happens in the most remote areas, you get it. For really in terms of communities believing in the IMC work, but also communicating, because when they communicate with us, they've picked up that we do go back, actually we act. Others will even give us, like for example, they'll give us in terms of cases that they have opened, and then we deposit them, we follow up, and that has been part of the work that we've been able to see. So I'm interested particularly because the person who's asking this question in detail is focused on Malutia Pofo Botlhale, who is in good, talking about the issue evidence in particular. We don't have that evidence of migration, particularly of Somali, Ethiopian, and Bangladesh. So we'll request more details out of them so that we can be able to deal with that. We have reflected about what has happened in Bellville in terms of the issues that relates to foreign nationals who actually resisted, and that has been dealt with. The issues of figures, BMA remains the authorized body for ports of entry. When people come in and they leave, whether they come by air, they come by sea, they come by land, they actually, BMA is present to record that. So the figures that we have are reliable. And I won't answer for another country. or state. I'm reporting on behalf of South Africa. These are our figures. They are accurate. They don't have discrepancies. Literally, we monitor daily the numbers, and you can see them as they continue. You can justify how they've added. You can justify. So the 72 I said is not only for the center. If you notice what I said. The 72 is for the entirety and of a particular period. So we're talking about periods, and so that when you look at the statistics, you can go back and check the numbers in between. What number are we talking about between what and what? If you remember when we started repatriating, Zimbabweans, we didn't have a lot of numbers of movements. I remember one person even in the media, when we were addressing media, asking us, we don't see movement of Zimbabweans, what is happening? So it can be that when you had a huge number of movement of Malawians, Zimbabweans then automatically have overtaken them with maybe more than 100. I think maybe through the diplomatic channels, Minister Lamula will verify where the official who spoke about the number at Zimbabwe got them from. But this is our accurate number, and I want us to utilize that because we can back it with facts, and it's what we have. On the issue of farming communities, you'd note that I have indicated that we have asked from the economic work stream led by DTIC in the coming 2 weeks to engage. We don't want to utilize as well as the IMC what we see in the public domain that has not been deposited formally with us. So we've asked the Minister of DTIC, together with the colleagues that I've named, it's Minister of DTIC, Trade and Industry and Competition, Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Tourism, Minister of Higher Education and Training, Minister of Small Business Development, and Minister of Employment and Labor. Those are the colleagues that we formulated as a task team. We've given 2 weeks for them to do a proper analysis based on reliable information, engaging with the sectors, engaging with the employers, engaging with the companies in the country to understand what has been the impact. The impact is not only about those who have moved. We've also asked them to go and verify the data with tourism. Have we seen a decline in tourism numbers during that particular time? What has been the impact? So we're looking holistically in that area. Whether we're having the impact, what has this had as an impact on our economy in terms of our contribution to GDP in a quarter or particular time? Because we do recognize that there's one quarter that was quite intense. Two, is that indeed if we've had, for example, in the agriculture space, the farming, because farmers have seasonal workers, where they would come either during the plowing season or even during the what is the end product when they reap what they've been able to sow during that time. And then they would have seasonal workers. We'll have to engage through the Minister of Agriculture, who's part of that task team, to understand what has been the trend, but also to understand what are the skills that are required. Do we have South Africans that can be able to do that work? And so that we also close the gap of employment. Employment Labour has a database of various individuals who've registered and want to continue to add South Africans who are unemployed to register in that database, so that when we utilize that database to look at placing and matching and also saying these are the available skills that are required per particular sector is important. But another discussion in the IMC was that we do have particular challenges, and that's what we need to. We flagged it long time ago. I remember even when I was chairing the economic cluster, about the issue of the skills mismatch between what the economy requires. And we're saying, let's utilize also this opportunity to be able to see how best can we be. It's not only going to be under Department of Higher Education and Training, maybe they are sitters only in terms of training, but we've got to look at other partners. This is one of the areas that we're thinking about, partners who can come on board to help us skill and make sure that we skill properly and be able to close that gap. So it's those things that we're looking at. But the other conversation was that in agriculture, for example, head boy, headman, we were making this even to say, if you are in Limpopo, all of us are taught to say we must go to school. We have degrees, we have qualification. Are you thinking that I'm going to leave when I have a qualification to go and look after cattle? It's not going to happen. So how do we close that gap? What will that mean? And it's those things that as IMC, we're really internalizing. We're really looking at them and thinking what it means. I made another comment about Minister Lamola in the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation to say, as we deal with migration, it's going to be how we also engage on the continent, but also what South Africa represents to the region and to the continent. Those are things that as we go forward, we'll start dealing with. If you look at Mozambique, Minister Moseka was sharing with us, and many of us know that when you are there, you are a young person, you grow, they say, go to school, educate, so that so that you can go and work in South Africa, in Johannesburg. So it's those things that it's not just once-off thing. That's why we are saying to South Africans, this IMC is internalizing all areas. Others are medium-term or immediate that we think we'll be able to solve, are medium-term, but are also long-term. Working together between ourselves as a country, solving our own problems, but also within the region to solve the problem so that we can be able to have, and the continent, we can have a sustainable continent, because no country alone can survive without migration. Migration is a phenomenon that exists. And that's why we understand that let's make sure that those who are here, the country is suitable for travel and for trade within the legal bounds. So we want to urge again, our stakeholders, our communities, work with us. Where you have information, like you now, Botlali, you've got our team. Please provide us with more details so that we can zoom into that area and look what is happening if it's a new trend. You'd remember previously we were told about these people who are going house to house. We got it. We were able to intervene. We are dealing with it. People have been arrested. So if there's an activity that happens, we want South Africans to trust their government, to be able to act in their best interest. Please share with us. Give us the information, we'll be able to interact, we'll be able to deal with it. As I said, there's a particular member who shared with me this week a video of an individual who went into a community. They shared the telephone numbers. We've handed it over to SABC. They are dealing with it because we do believe that has moved even to extortion. So it's some of the things that we are dealing with, colleagues. And when we receive that information, we process it. If it relates to other countries, we deposit to Minister Lamola, who's been doing quite a lot of work. You'd have seen even during the week he was at Ghana, doing a lot of work. We are not diplomats, all of us. He is the chief diplomat of the country. We give him that information to say, help us here. And a lot of things that you see, colleagues, is not out of an osmosis. It's not automatic. It's government working, all of us working with our stakeholders, with our partners. Between 2 weeks that we come back to report to you, there's extensive work behind the closed door that is being done. Others we will share publicly, others we will not share, but you'll see the results in terms of our commitment. But we remain committed to what President has mandated us to do, and that work is continued. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think we still have some questions online. And Tate Sulemale, I see they are directed to the two ministers here. Can you read them on the record, please?
Thank you, Chairperson. We have two questions from Kwena Mashale Esuwete. Ministers, there are reports that 4 people were shot dead in Kloorkop, Kempton Park, in what is allegedly linked to the immigration dispute, with the victims said to be Pakistani shop owners. What has the police established and is linked to migration tensions? Last question. Ghana has threatened to take South Africa to the African Union over xenophobia allegations. What does this say about how the continent views South Africa, especially after Ghana reportedly rejected a delegation sent by the president to discuss the issue? Is the committee concerned that continued immigration tensions could further damage the country's reputation? That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The Minister of is here. So we'll deal directly with the facts. So I see there is also a hand in-house.
It's Nobile Madala from Newsroom again. I just want to find out from the minister, she spoke about the fact that currently illegal mining has not been identified as a crime. Could you perhaps elaborate on that, Minister, to just give us details around how that works? But also from the Minister of Police, because I mean we've seen that there's a lot of police on the ground, yes, but in terms of what sort of skills or what are you investing in to ensure that the police can be able to deal with all these issues with regards to immigration? And some of the cases, voice.
What goes up to the mic? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could hear the first question, but the second one I've heard.
To the Minister of Police, we just want to find out in terms of the skills or what you're investing in with regards to the police when it comes to these immigration issues. Mainly because in some of the operations you would find that you have immigration officers that would say there's something wrong with the paperwork, and afterwards you also find out that the people have been released, and in some cases you'd have the community asking how they were released, and then you'll hear the police telling them no, there was just something that changed with regards to their ID or something like that. So if you can maybe clarify how the SAPS is working in terms of that skills development in that case.
Thank you very much. Ministers, I'm not sure who would start. Police or the chief diplomat of the council.
Thank you for the question. With respect to the 4 Pakistanis in the case that you mentioned, Kempton Park, I can confirm that it's been investigated. I'm not aware at this point that there have been any arrests. The thing I would like to say, though, is that we've got to be a little bit careful here, because the police don't keep stats that reflect the ethnicity or the national origins of either victims or perpetrators. In this situation, we're having to ask that question so that we can actually understand the extent to which criminality is linked with the illegal immigration crisis. So we will continue to investigate these cases so that we can satisfy ourselves that people aren't been victimized simply because of their ethnicity or national origins. In this case, we haven't come to that conclusion yet. How do you distinguish between cases of criminality and cases of targeting of illegal immigrants? As far as your second question is concerned, the police don't have the primary responsibility for enforcing the immigration laws. They do affect arrests where they are able to determine that a particular person is in the country without the valid documents. We haven't added any additional training requirements. It might become clear that that is going to be required as part of the reset, but the police are trained in the law to enforce the law. We haven't got specific courses on how they should be treating the specific cases of enforcement of illegal immigration laws, and I'm not sure that's really necessary. We're going to have to make a case why we must introduce specific curriculum courses, train the police specifically to deal with this particular category of unlawful conduct. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for comments and the questions. Marshall has insinuated that the delegation of President Ramaphosa to Ghana was rejected. I must put it that that is incorrect. I went to Accra, Ghana, as the special envoy of the president, and I was well received by President Mahama, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ghana, Mr. Ablakwa, and his delegation, and we had a discussion. Firstly, the meeting reaffirmed South Africa-Ghana relations, that this matter on the table is not going to impact or affect South Africa-Ghana relations, because the relationship between Ghana and South Africa is enduring, has got a long history of solidarity and apartheid, but also beyond apartheid. South Africa and Ghana established long-standing, good, cordial relations that remains enduring to this date. And to date, there is also a number of South African companies invested in the Ghanaian economy. Some of them are leading companies in the Ghanaian stock exchange and in the markets. So the meeting was very robust, characterized by frankness on a number of issues that are emerging in our country. But that was the first point of agreement. The second point that was agreed upon is that South Africa, as a sovereign country, has a right to enforce its immigration laws, just like Ghana has the right to enforce its own immigration laws. But what they then raised as Ghana is the issue of the violence that accompany the current protest, or the protests as they erupt in South Africa in relations to immigration, not only this one, but the previous ones. This is an issue that they have raised, the enforcement of the laws by individuals, private groupings, and what they characterize as what they view as impunity, because since that period they believe that there has not been arrest of some of the perpetrators that impersonate Home Affairs officials, police officers, and so forth. And we did respond that the South African government has acted. There have been arrests of those who are impersonating police officers, and I'm glad that the chair of the IMC has outlined those numbers of the people that have been arrested for impersonating of police officers, and those that have been involved in looting, housebreaking, and so forth during this protest. There remain specific cases of Ghanaian nationals that have been killed, murdered, like the one that was murdered in Nyanga, on the matter that the police have said is an extortion case. It remains an active investigation by the South African police. So we were able to demonstrate that there is work that law enforcement is doing with regards to these cases. It's not a situation of impunity. There is action and there is work. And as I have said, on the issue of the enforcement of immigration laws, not only from Ghana, across the continent, there's an acknowledgement that every country, it's its sovereign right to enforce the immigration laws, which it must be done by any country within the boundaries of their own laws. And many countries that I have interacted with, the key issue they are raising is the violence, the enforcement by individuals, what they deem or see as impunity. So we are glad that there is credible information and evidence of action by the lawful authorities to deal with these matters. As Minister Kubai has also said, that we have also received a communique from the African Women and People's Rights Commissioner, which we are working with Justice to, we have responded to. and they will be coming to South Africa soon on a visit to check. This is the initial first step where they will engage with various stakeholders to understand the matter. It is not yet what is at the second level of the structure called a fact-finding mission at this stage. It is still at an initial stages of gathering to understand what are the issues and so forth. And we have said they are invited to come to South Africa. South Africa is a constitutional democracy, open and transparent, and our stakeholders will engage with them what actions have government taken and what are the other stakeholders involved in our country, including human rights bodies, roles that they have played on this matter. So I think for now that will be what I can say from the response. The other issue is that we have to continue to engage at the level of what you have said. It has been raised as an issue for the African Union. The AU has got a protocol on the free movement of persons, rights of residents, and rights of establishment, often called the AU Free Movement Protocol, which is a landmark treaty adopted by the African Union in January 2018. It forms a core flagship project under the AU Agenda 2063, aimed at having a common and regulated approach on Africans' ability to travel, work, and live across the continent. It mandates states to modernize and coordinate border data and law enforcement and enhance anti-human trafficking system. SADC also has a similar protocol on the free movement of people, the facilitations of movements of persons. South Africa is one of the signatories. It has now been signed by about 7 countries in the SADC area. We still need about 9 to operationalize this protocol. So it means now we operate with one of the AU. But both protocols calls for regular and orderly migration, which is a point of emphasis, that migration must be orderly, must be regular, must also be legal, to enable economic activities to function, to work, to enable also the Africa Free Trade Area, which is the flagship of the African Union on Agenda 2063 for regional integration, for the movement of people and persons. And it also deals with issues of anti-trafficking, illegality, and so forth. So the protocols of the AU and that of SADC don't call for disorderly, irregular, and illegal migration. So migration must be orderly, must be regular, and must be legal, which is what the South African government has to do to ensure that migration is within the parameters of the law, it's regular, it's orderly, and it is within what our laws prescribe. The only issue that all of them do raise, which is what I've already said, is that where there is a challenge of irregular and illegal, including undocumented immigrants, it must be dealt with in a human way. It must be dealt with by law enforcement, not private individuals and groups that are not mandated by the laws of that country. So that is what we have to continue to deal with and to respond to. And we will continue to engage across the continent with various countries to put this into perspective. And the debate that has been said by Ghana, as I've said, these protocols have been there. And the debate at the African Union has been on migration. South Africa is one of the highest receiving countries of migrants, both regular and irregular. And on irregular one, I believe we are the #1 country in the continent, followed by Egypt and Ivory Coast in West Africa. So it does mean that there are root causes, challenges in the continent that leads to the issue of irregular migration. Stats shows that about 45% of the continent lives outside their own countries, and 50% of that is within the African continent. So it does mean that South Africa then receives the highest share of that, and there are others that receives the other parts of the migrants in the continent. North Africa also is a bit fortunate because North Africa is another corridor of migration, but it plays a double role, unlike South Africa. South Africa's role is only one, to receive. North Africa plays a double role of receiving and also being a conduit to Europe. So hence there will be partnership with some of the North African countries with the European Union to respond to the issue of irregular migration and so forth, to avoid migrants going into Europe. In fact, some of the countries receive both technical and financial support from the European Union to deal with this issue of the double role that the North Africa plays. We don't have that privilege. We only deal with it from our fiscus, respond to it here, and those pressures are only dealt with by the South African government. So there is debate that is being called by Ghana. Should not be a debate of finger pointing, cheap political scoring against South Africa, labeling South Africa as this and that, because it will not be helpful. It should be a constructive engagement on migration, the root causes, the economic challenges that the continent faces, the challenges of lack of economic growth, unemployment, and so forth happening across the continent, issues of governance, peace, and security that leaves people to leave their own countries, including issues of climate change. So framing the debate in that context will lead to a positive and a constructive engagement. Because if it's just about South Africa, therefore it's about targeting South Africa as a country. It's not to deal and to respond to this challenge, because while we are the highest receiving in the continent, we are not the first country where there have been challenges for immigrants. We all know what happens sometimes in the Red Sea and so forth, in some parts of the continent, how immigrants are treated, illegal immigrants who are en route to Europe. We know what is happening with those. So that is a question that must be debated and must be engaged in this debate. So the debate must be comprehensive if it has to find a solution. Not just to say we want to debate South Africa, you are Afrophobia or you are xenophobic, and it ends there. It will not resolve the problem, because the problem is economical, it's peace and stability, issues of climate change. All those root causes lead to the current situation that we are responding to in the South African context. But not only in the South African context, all over the continent, North Africa, in West Africa, and everyone is dealing with this matter the same way. So the same way you want to deal with South Africa, it must be dealt with all other countries. But already, as South Africa, we have said we are prepared to engage with the fact-finding mission of the African Union. We are prepared with all those processes. So this debate at this stage, to take it at that level, and we have said that we will welcome it if it does happen. We can take that debate to deal with it in a comprehensive way. But we think that at this stage, it may still be a bit premature, particularly when reports have to be processed, where we have to engage with the Commission to respond and all that. But we will handle the matter and deal with it in those platforms of the African Union. The midterm Executive Council meeting of the African Union is starting on Tuesday. And we will further engage on this matter. But in a nutshell, we are saying as South Africa, we welcome any discussion that will be comprehensive on migration to deal with all issues, including the root causes of illegal migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Lamola, for contextualizing the whole issue of migration. As government, we continue to caution against relying on unverified information. And thank you very much for providing the right information. This then brings us to the end of this briefing, but I will invite the chairperson of the IMC to then adjourn this briefing. Chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for those inputs, and also to Brawili. As we conclude, let me just deal the issue of the bill in relation to illegal mining. We will come publicly as the department with all the legislation, I think in a week, so few days to come, if you can allow me, Ngobile, because we'll be able to go into detail and release it so that you are able to see what we are talking about, unlike talking about what is still hidden behind closed doors. But we are attending to that, and will come out in few days as the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, just around all the legislative reforms that helps quite a number of areas of work that needs to be assisted. Let me take this opportunity just to say the IMC remains committed to ensuring that migration management is managed within the law. We need, as a country, once and for all, to put incidences that have happened in the past behind us. And we want to ensure that we don't have any other time where anyone can utilize this subject as a mobilizing platform to instill fear to anyone, to cause disorder in our society, but to threaten lives and threaten destruction of our properties. So that's why we continue to be committed to ensuring that we implement the 5-point plan and monitored by Cabinet. You can hear me emphasizing monitored by Cabinet. We report every month to Cabinet colleagues. We meet bi-weekly, but the work streams meets regularly, and we report to Cabinet every month. So this week, next week, is another reporting time where we account to the President and members of the executive across in the work that we are doing, get feedback whether we are still on track, or get a whipping if we are not doing well. So you can be rest assured that we are just not a team of individuals, of ministers and deputy ministers who are not accountable. And the work of law enforcement continues, the work of the ministers, MCs, deputy ministers. I didn't even reflect it. Deputy Minister Nzuza was in Limpopo doing that work. Deputy Minister Employment Sibiya was in Gauteng. So that work continues, and we're looking at as well coming out. We thought that let's intensify this other areas, and then we'll come out in various areas as in. And you can see Minister Lamola has been very, very hard at work. The lessening of the noise is not automatic. He's been working, and we really support him in the work. That's why his feedback to us is quite important, and that's what we pay attention to, that because we have to balance between what is being done both internally in the country and outside is important. The work that we do as well is supported, colleagues, by organized crime strategy. I must emphasize this. There's an interlinked. Minister here has been working hard with his team to ensure that that is working. But this we want to say in our, as you saw, that I reflected on a Mexican national who came here and operated a drug factory. And this is where we come in as well, to say we want to urge those who come within our shores to come here, abide by our laws, and not to commit crimes. So the support that we get from organized crime is really, organized crime team is really welcomed. As you would have seen, Operation Prosper continues to help us in the communities. So it's joint effort, a multifaceted effort, but also the work that is being done by DTIC. They've got what we call a butterfly approach in terms of ensuring that our economy can reindustrialize and also rebuild capacity so that South Africans can have job opportunities, can find themselves being able to have a decent work with decent salaries and also living a better life that they have been promised. So it's a multifaceted approach. We'll take it step by step, as we said, medium term, long term, and also working in an integrated manner to look at how does this work that we do get interfaced with other work, whether in JCPS, whether in social cluster, whether in governance cluster and all that. So it's very important. So that's why we are saying as the IMC, we continue as we committed to doing this work. Allow us to do this work. When you go and do your own thing, you are disrupting and distracting us from the focus that we have. If you go and start doing door-to-door, you distract us from the key areas of work that we need to do. So we want to work together. Don't do door-to-door. Give us information that you've got that there are illegal immigrants in this area. Then we get law enforcement agencies to go and deal with that. But equally, those that are within the country legally, when they are being intimidated, when they are being attacked, we are requesting them to send us information so that they can say, we are here legally as in South Africa, but we are being treated badly. And that is important for us to ensure that is balanced. So I want to thank our communities. Many of our communities across, many of our stakeholders in these communities, but South Africans themselves, have been supporting the work by the IMC, have been providing information and feedback, and have been actually saying, we're starting to see where the issues are, and we promise that we will not let the foot off the pedal. We'll continue to work. I want to thank you as well, members of the media, because you've helped us carry this message to our households. You've helped us carry this message into communities. Many of you even translate into different languages. We appreciate that because it helps us to build a stability. We all have a responsibility to build a better South Africa. We all have to be patriots and protect the integrity of our country, protect the image of South Africa so that we don't make government's work difficult, where we find instead of advocating for what we stand for as a country, what we are envisaging, what is our vision, how we've been able to deal with a lot of issues that are difficult, and then we find ourselves having to be asked to explain ourselves. We want to reach a point where no minister, when they travel to go to a conference, including Minister Lamula, having to start by explaining themselves in what is happening in terms of migration. We want to be able to articulate the foreign policy of South Africa without having to be apologetic about where we stand. So we want to appreciate the work that you do on the ground as journalists. Want to appreciate the NGOs on the ground, and we continue to say our doors are open as IMC. If you want to engage with us, if you want to submit suggestions, we have provided contacts, we have provided information. Please do so, because we do know that you have the best interest of this country and you'll work with us. With that, colleagues, we'll see each other again in 2 weeks' time, where we give you update of what the IMC has done in the coming 2 weeks. Thank you very much.